What's up, everybody? Sports Chaos with Dame. Today, we're coming to you with an episode of the round one of the college football playoffs, as well as the round two matchups that we will be looking forward to. That'll be played on New Year's Eve and then, of course, New Year's Day. So, without further ado, we're going to get into that. The first matchup we got, of course, is the JMU Oregon game. If you watch my previous videos, you know in this matchup, I didn't really expect much. I had mentioned that maybe JMU could keep it competitive for a quarter or two. But even that didn't last long, as I believe Oregon scored on their first five possessions of the game and then kind of called the dogs off. However, they didn't end up covering this 20 and a half point spread. So some people have, issues with that, considering that they weren't able to cover three touchdowns against a team from the group of five that we didn't believe should be in the postseason due to the fact that there were multiple group of five teams. Um, so, of course, that's an interesting conversation, but they got that win in that one. And now they move on to the second round to play Texas Tech. And this game here, I tell you what, it's super interesting because I'm high on Oregon, like very high on Oregon. But I do believe Texas Tech has the defense and a good enough offense to be able to go compete for a national championship. I mean, their only loss of the season has came to Arizona State when their quarterback was hurt. Other than that, that defense has been lights out. Of course, BYU, which was a team that could have, essentially been snubbed in the college football playoffs, has got blown out by Texas Tech twice this season. And of course, their linebacker was in the Heisman running for most of the year. He's been dominant on both sides of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball. They even put him in on offense and let him score a touchdown. So, Jacob Rodriguez has been balling. And I think that this will be a super good matchup. The thing with this is it's in Miami. So the weather should be good. I think I was looking, let me see here. 9 mile per hour winds is what it's going to be, and about 70 degrees. So it's a beautiful day for football, honestly. And I'm kind of like 50-50 with this game, but of course we're doing the podcast, so we're going to let y'all know what the picks are. But we're going to go through a few things in this game. The last time these two teams faced was in 2023, where Texas Tech hosted Oregon and lost the game 28-20. So, of course, on a year by year basis in college football, especially in the portal days, 2 years a lot of time. So you really can't gauge it off of that. But what's some things that we can look into, or some comparisons on the numbers, right? And offensively coming in, we have Texas Tech, which is ranked 48th in the country in red zone efficiency. We have Oregon at 53. So of course they're a little better than Oregon in the red zone efficiency. They're better than Oregon on third down conversions, first downs. Um, of course, Oregon doesn't give up near as many sacks. They're actually 12th, which is very good. And then, things like passing yards. The passing yards for Texas Tech, they're 11th. So, but then you have things like yards per play where Oregon is fourth in the country. But like I said, the defense, the defense is going to be the deciding factor in this game, because Morton has been pretty solid. Of course, Dante Moore's probably projected the best quarterback in the draft if he were to come out this year. As of right now, I mean, you could probably argue him or Mendoza. I would like Dante Moore over Mendoza myself personally. Um, but I mean, Dante's Moore has thrown for 3,046 yards. And like I said, Morton's had a pretty good season. He did miss that one game, but he's threw for 2,643 yards. Whittington's rushed for 798 yards for Oregon. Dickey's ran for 1,095 for Texas Tech. But you'll have some that'll argue the competition of the two different conferences that they're in, Big Ten, Big 12. But at the end of the day, when you know ball, and you can see that Texas Tech is a team that is going to be tough to deal with over the course of 1 through 4. You hear me? 1 through 4, it can be a damn problem because their style of defense has shown to be superior in every matchup they've had this year. And like I said, now you can call it a step up in competition for them if that's what you want to call it. But that defense is for real. However, I'm leaning Texas Tech. in this matchup. It's like I said, I'm 50-50, but we're going with the picks live and direct. So I'm going to lean Texas Tech. However, I don't know, maybe by the time they play, my pick could change, but I definitely think that Texas Tech will win this game. Like I said, it's a defensive matchup. If they can get to Dante Moore, rattle him early, maybe even, force a turnover, then I think it could be enough. And then it's going to be on Morton to take care of the football, manage the game, and do what he does, and lean on the defense, which has been the strong point of that team all year. But again, this is a big test. You're going into Oregon. Oregon's losses over the course of the last few years has been to like the best of the best, right? I mean, they lost to Ohio State. I think they did lose to Washington, but that's their little rival over there. So you know how them games can go. But yeah, I think over the course of the last 5 or 6 losses Oregon has had, they've been to the elite of the elite for the most part. So this is going to be a tough game for Texas Tech. If Texas Tech wins this game, obviously they're only one game away from the national championship at that point. But that would definitely prove that they're a true contender if they can knock off Oregon. Because, like I said, Dante Moore's probably QB1 in the draft today, in my opinion. Of course, a lot will start changing in the next few months, but for my sake, on how I feel, as close as it is, how much of a toss up it is, I'm going to lean Texas Tech in this matchup. And I will give you all, remember in the last episode, I had to give you all my first round matchups. We did them live, but of course it was my bracket predictor, so I had to go ahead and fill it out. So I don't want to show it just yet, considering the fact of course, my other picks will be revealed as well. But so I'll go through all the games, and then at the end, I will show you all my bracket. Of course, I didn't lose in the first round. So now round 2, hopefully I can go 100% again and keep this thing rolling. But we definitely will take a look at that at the end. And like I said, we'll see how these matchups go, because you really don't know what to expect. And then we can get into the Miami and Texas A&M game. What a game that was. I know we're in a day and age where it's football, 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 right? But the thing with that is the fact of the way that this game was won. It was a gritty game. It was a lot of adversity in this game for both teams. The circumstances, it was like 14 mile per hour winds. Miami being at College Station in front of 100,000, the toughest place to play in college football, arguably. Like, it was a lot of circumstances. And through all of this, the highs and lows, both teams stayed the course and gave us a classic. Like I said, in today's world where everything's a lot of offensive driven, this was a defensive special teams type game. I mean, all the way down to the final possession where you had Miami scored a go-ahead touchdown with a little over a minute left to go up 10-3, and then all of a sudden Texas A&M moves the ball right down the field and gets inside the goal line and throws a pick in the end zone to seal the game. It was a crazy game. I mean, you had Miami's kicker was 1 for 4. Marcel Reed got a strip sack for a turnover in plus territory. Like I just mentioned, he threw the pick in the end zone to tie the game at the end. Malachi Tony had what looked like it was going to be a punt return touchdown and tripped up over his own leg to fall down. And in college, once you hit that turf, it's over with, regardless if someone touched you or not. So, and I think that ended up leading to a missed field goal. So the game was crazy. Miami came out with the win on the road. Now they got a real bigger test in front of them with Ohio State, of course, the defending champions. Miami's coming in as 9.5-point underdogs, and I'm gonna say this: I am a Miami fan, so some things y'all may take as being biased. But one thing's for sure, defense wins championships, and Miami's defense is as good as anybody's in the country. You can look at their losses and say, oh, X, Y, and Z. Carson Beck has the experience. Carson Beck can be good or bad. We know that. It's no secret. But regardless of what Carson Beck we're going to get, we know that defense should show up. This is a tall task. We have a top 3 pass rush in the country. Statistics and numbers will tell you that. Mesidor and Ruben Bain are dogs, All-Americans. Bain will probably be a top 10 pick. So, like, they're problems. And you've seen what they did, how they impacted the game at College Station against another good offensive line. So I think if Miami can get to the quarterback, Shadow saying a little bit, make them think, have them feel that pressure even when we're not really there. Start to, make it be mental for the young man. I think this could be a tough game. It's not at home for them. It's not at home for us. We're going to a neutral field, AT&T Stadium, and I think that this can be a good game. With that being said, a lot of pressure is going to be on Carson Beck, to show up. The conditions aren't going to be near what they were last week. So you got to make the most of the opportunities. But Fletcher is a physical runner. I mean, he broke his longest run of his career in the last game against Texas A&M. So he's just a physical guy. 3-4 pop, beat the defense up late in the game. It's hard to stop him. And that's kind of what we've seen in the last matchup. And I think that could be effective in this one. Now, of course, like I said, with this defense is a step up from Texas A&M. Although A&M was second in the country in sacks, the back end of Ohio State is definitely better in my opinion. No disrespect to Texas A&M because they have a good defense as well with good secondary, but I just think the back end, I'm super high on Caleb Downs. He might just be the best defensive player in the draft, but that's another discussion for another day. So I do think that the back end for Ohio State's pretty good. So that's where we'll be challenged a little bit. Of course, Texas A&M gave us that look of doubling Malachi Tony everywhere he went. So it'd be I wouldn't be surprised if teams use that moving forward, considering the playmaker he's been. So I think establishing the run early, being able to work off the play action, uh, Beck being able to get the ball out on time. I think all of those things will play a key factor in that matchup. Which again, obviously, a lot of people's going to go against Miami here, but what better than to be the underdogs? I just think that this is a game where it's two strong defenses. And saying is good, but I think we can get to them. I've seen some things in the Indiana game that definitely gives me life, and I'm not saying that we're better than Indiana or whatever the case may be, Miami that is. But I do think our defense is better. And with that being said, I like our chances in this matchup. Although Ohio State had some self-inflicted wounds in that matchup. Of course, like the late missed field goal and things like that could have changed the outcome. I mean, I like it. Like let's look at some defensive ranks for these two teams and see what it looks like. So Miami is actually fourth in the country in sacks. Ohio State is 31st, but they're first in red zone efficiency. So their red zone defense is very good. Our kicker is usually pretty good. Last week, under them circumstances, he was 1-for-4, so that isn't very well. But the fact that Ohio State has the best red zone defense in the nation, that's going to be big, to be able to get in there and get some points early. Third down conversions, they're better than us. They get more first downs. They're actually second in the nation in first downs. They're first in passing yards. They have the best passing offense, but the best way to negate that is to get to that quarterback, which Miami does at a very high rate. And then you got them that are first in points, us that are sixth in points. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, for them to be first in passing yards, I mean, run the ball. I mentioned earlier Fletcher. That's going to be key. So we'll see how it goes. Our defensive back end isn't that good, but I don't know. Let's see what's happening. And then of course, Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith's going to be the one here because it's going to be interesting to see what our corners do because we have very good safeties. We have a very good pass rush. Our corners are good, but they're not elite. And we know what that receiving core at Ohio State is, so they will be tested. And it's going to be interesting, man. I can't wait for the matchup, though. I wanted to see us get in. We got in. We got the first road win as underdogs. And now, we'll lead on to this matchup and see what it is. But, of course, I'm going Miami to get the win in a tough, gritty game. Let me see what the over-under is on this game. 42.5. So they're not expecting a lot of points. So when you put it in perspective, 42.5, and they're basically giving Miami 10. If Miami comes out just based on what they're saying and can score, 10 points in the first half, they're talking we got a ball game, So I definitely think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a gritty game. Like I said, both defenses are good. As long as we don't give up a lot of big plays, we can get to the quarterback, which I think we'll be able to for sure. With the one-on-one opportunities that our D-line will get because our interior line is very good as well, even though, Bain and Mesidor get all the praise. So I'm taking Miami in a close one. I could see like a a 24-21 type of game. Maybe not that high, but I'm saying like a 3-point game, 13, something crazy. You know how college scores sometimes can be weird. You never really know what to expect as far as field goals. So I could see it being something like that. That's the only way we win. I think if it turns into them being able to move the ball efficiently on our offense, it could get ugly for us. I mean, I'm sorry, on our defense, it could get ugly for us because, as I mentioned, they do have the best pass defense in the country. So you don't want to get stuck having to be one dimensional and just throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. That won't work in Miami's favor at all. So I think Miami will win a close one, like I said, 16-13, 19-16, something like that. Or if Ohio State can efficiently move the ball and put up points early and make Miami more of a passing team, I think the game could get out of hand. So we'll see. But I'm going Miami in a low scoring defensive battle. And don't be surprised when you see this and you be like, damn, he caught it. And then, of course, we had the Tulane-Ole Miss game in the first round. Wasn't really much to talk about here other than they wanted to see what the Tulane or Ole Miss could look like without Lane Kiffin, right? These two teams played earlier in the season. It was ugly. They played just right now. It was ugly. It was not good for TV. Shout out to Tulane. It is what it is. Now they're on to bigger and better. They got Georgia. Georgia's who a lot of people think is going to go win the national title based on the way that they've been playing the last month. Of course, they're coming in as a 3 seed, coming off a bye. Ole Miss was out there. They were getting the reps. What's the status of Chandless? Because that's going to be very important. Austin Simmons came in. He looked decent. Of course, it's Tulane, so he didn't really have to be challenged at that point. But the status of Chandless will definitely be key. But me personally, I don't even think that at this point in the year, I could go against Georgia in a matchup like this just because they're so used to being here. You know what I mean? And I know I'm probably contradicting because I went Miami over Ohio State. There's a little bias in there for sure because I'm a Miami fan. But I explained why. So, if you didn't see that part of this episode, then you will see it on the watch back or maybe the highlights because I don't want to, get back to that. But yes, I think that Georgia, their pedigree, of course, the young head coach, even though he is naturally a defensive guy, this bowl game against Tulane was his first game as a head coach. He was the defensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator apparently was the one calling plays, even though Kiffin was the one getting all the credit. So he still called a good game. But now's the challenge. You'll get Georgia, a familiar opponent. But like I said, I just think Georgia. I'm going to see what the spread may be in this game. I actually haven't looked because I just want to see how competitive that the sports books think this will be. So they actually have it at 6.5. And this is like we're talking about the 6 seed here. So that just tells you how good Georgia's been playing lately. And if Ole Miss, because Ole Miss has shown a few times this season when people thought they would lose or thought maybe they weren't for real, they came out and made those statements, got those big wins. So I wouldn't be surprised if they win this. It's a neutral field. That helps. They don't have to go to Athens and play down there. This will be a neutral field. So that helps, like I said. And maybe some people are writing him off because of Lane Kiffin leaving and him not being able to coach these guys. And for the ones that want them to win or are rooting for them, they know that this is a test. And then if they get past this, then you can have that conversation of, okay, now Ole Miss can really go win. But you can't really base nothing off the Tulane game. They were just every position they're better than that team. So I think Georgia's going to be the test. But like I said, I just looking at it, they're 6.5-point underdogs. They expecting Georgia to win this thing by about a touchdown. And I'd probably be somewhere around there myself. But kind of like I mentioned in the previous matchup, it's the same thing. If Georgia's able to get down the field the first few possessions and put up some points, put some pressure on Ole Miss and get some stops and kind of make them, play a game they don't want to necessarily play in a high stakes game like this against a physical team like Georgia, especially if Chandless ends up playing, considering he went out the game last week. You don't want to get into those type of games with Georgia. So it's going to be vital for Ole Miss to stay in the game early from start to finish. Don't let this game ever get out of reach, because at that point you're going against a team that has that pedigree of being there at the top of the top, getting it done. Kirby's not going to flinch, and he's going against a guy who, although he could be a good coach, that still be determined because now he is a head guy. He's a rookie head coach, and Kirby's one of the best out there. So this is going to be a super tall task for Ole Miss in my mind, but they do have a chance. But I think Georgia will win this game probably somewhere between 10 plus points. I'll say 10 plus points. I don't want to say, because I said in between, but let's just say about 10 plus points. I'll say that. So I actually would probably have this spread a little bit higher. They do have it at 55.5, so that means they do expect Ole Miss to score some points. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I think this is a very good matchup. I don't really know. Let me see if there's any. I was seeing if there's any news on Chambers. But there's not any news on him currently that I'm able to see. And I know when they played about 2 months ago as well, of course, Georgia beat them. And that was at Georgia. It'll be interesting. Georgia lost at Georgia to Bama that first time and then came out and dominated them in the SEC. And again, that goes back to Kirby. I'm telling you, Kirby, the team, the pedigree, all that matters. So I think that although that was a competitive matchup the first time, this game is going to be a little different. I don't expect Ole Miss to come out and score as many points as they did in that first matchup. I think it was a 52-45 game. I don't expect them to come out and score 45 points in a playoff game. Now, if they do, they're right in the fight. But again, I got Georgia winning this game probably about 10 or so. We can go with, if we're going to go score prediction, because I did do one on that last matchup, I'll say you can go 30-20 Georgia to win in this matchup against Ole Miss. And then, of course, I picked Miami over Ohio State. So that would put Miami in Georgia playing in the semis to go play in the national championship, which would also put Carson Beck versus old team. And ironically, that's how I have it on my bracket as well, of course, because they're my picks. Like I said, at the end of this video, I will reveal that to y'all because we still have the one game to talk about, which is the big one. The number one team in the land, the Indiana Hoosiers, and Coach Cignetti, the Heisman winner Mendoza, playing against Alabama, a team that's coming off a big, gutsy win in the first round against Oklahoma. In the game, they fell down to a team that they lost to just a few weeks prior at home. They traveled to Oklahoma to face the Sooners in a revenge game, of course, with higher stakes. And they fell down 17-0, got back in the game, stayed the course, and ended up pulling out the win 34-24. So that was a big win for them. They hadn't been playing their best ball lately. They were a team that was questioned after they got blown out in the SEC championship. Should they had even got the benefit of the doubt to be a 3-loss team and still get in, but because of their strength of schedule, they still got in. And because of them being the 1 seed in the SEC, I believe, even though they got beat bad in the conference championship, that played a factor as well. So they ended up getting in. They righted a wrong, which was one of those 3 losses on a bigger stage on the road. And now they travel to a neutral field to face the number 1 team in the land. Now, the big thing is with these matchups is it's always interesting to see if these teams will come off these bye weeks and be a little rusty, come out the gate a little slow, because if so, that could be detrimental, especially in a matchup like this, because Alabama is a team that's kind of struggled, but we know that defense was supposed to be very good from the, preseason expectations. And obviously they're still here. They're one of the last 8 teams left, so they're still a very good team. And I actually think that this is a matchup where Indiana has a lot of pressure on them because now they've been the one. They won the Big Ten. They're undefeated. Now you have to win 3 games to finish this beautiful story that it would be for the Indiana Hoosiers, right? But I think they ran into their match. I think Alabama gets them out of there. And I honestly think that Alabama wins this game by a touchdown or better. I just think that Alabama's defense is going to be too good, too fast, too physical, too strong. And I know y'all are going to say, oh, but they played Ohio State, X, Y, and Z. Absolutely. Although the weapons may be better, I think I like Bama in this matchup. I don't know why. Maybe I'm being a little disrespectful towards Indiana, but I think this is a very intriguing matchup for them due to the fact of the physicality, man. But again, who am I? Alabama 7-point underdogs. And I'm sitting here talking like obviously the number one team in the land doesn't have a chance. But I can also admit I'm one of them guys where like I'm completely contradicting myself, I feel like, in this video. Because Bama, I always tell my brother he's a Bama's fan. DeBoer is not Saban. The culture is not the same. That them days are over. But I just feel like they're so good. And then I'll tell you what, this Bama and Indiana game is super interesting because I'm looking here and I see that Indiana is 7-point favorites. Whew. Man, it's always so tough because like if you're a fan of Indiana, it's cool. Like you get it. Yeah, we seen them beat Ohio State, so now it's like okay, they might really be the real deal. But to make them 7-point favorites against Alabama, like I think that's kind of absurd. I get they're the number one team in the land, but Bama was the one seed in the SEC at the end of the regular season. So to think that you could say the best team in the Big Ten is 7 points better than the first or second best team in the SEC is kind of crazy to me. If I'm being quite honest, Alabama hadn't been playing good ball, but the fact that they went into Norman and got revenge on a team after falling down 17-0, that resilience they got there shows me that they trying to make a statement and quiet all the doubters that said that they shouldn't have got in for whatever reason it may have been. And the fact that they're 7-point underdogs is a little crazy to me, but who am I? I'm leaning towards Alabama getting a dub in this matchup. I know Mendoza and Coach Signetti got these boys playing inspired football. They've been the best team in college this year. There's no disputing that after they went and got the win against Ohio State. Who are we to say anything other? Considering that's the defending national champs, and that was their first loss, and they were a battle of unbeatens, even though Ohio State shot themselves in the foot a few times in that game. But nonetheless, 7 points is kind of crazy. Let me see what the over-under is. They had the over-under at 48.5. I don't know. I think Alabama wins this matchup. And I would probably flip the line and give Alabama a 7-point win, if I'm being honest. Simpson's thrown for more yards. The rush game for neither team, neither team's leading back has over 1,000. I like the receiving core better in Bama. I think the defense is actually. Let's look at these defensive ranks because that defense in IU is balling. But again, man, they got the best first down defense in the country. IU, that is. Bama has the 9th. Bama has the 10th best passing or the 10th passing defense in the country. IU has the 18th. But Bama's offensive passing yards is 24th. So Bama's defense to their offense matches win some of the matchups, but I don't know, man. I just think this is going to be a tough ask. But the biggest key in this game is going to be Alabama getting off the field on third down. If Alabama can get off the field on third down, I definitely think they can win this game comfortably because that's really Indiana's bread and butter. They're the best third down team in America. So this is going to be one of them ones, but I just think, I don't know why, I feel like Bama's going to probably flip the line and probably win by a touchdown or so themselves. But, of course, Indiana is the one seed. If Indiana was to come out and cover the spread, I wouldn't be surprised. This would just be one of them games where I'm like, okay, all right, now we got 2 games for them left, and it's just going to get tougher and tougher because if they beat Bama by 7, then they got to run into another gauntlet. Yeah, another tough team in this gauntlet. You know what I mean? And then it's like, they just keep knocking these teams off. Obviously, there's only 3 games left. They got to win 3 games to have a perfect season. So we'll see how this goes, but I do think that Alabama beats them, which then, of course, would put, who is that? Alabama versus Texas Tech, based on my picks. It would be Alabama versus Texas Tech, and then Miami versus Georgia. And both of the winner of those, of course, would be playing to see who goes to the national championship. It kind of puts me in a spot because I told you I was going to show y'all my thing, and as I'm looking at it, you would then see my picks for the semifinals. So with that being said, what we'll do is I'll reveal my picks at the very end, or maybe say next round, right? Because next round, if my picks aren't 100%, there's only going to be 2 matchups left either way it goes, so we'll be able to talk about those, and then I can also reveal who I think will win the championship from that point on. So we can do both of those in one video, and then I can still do another another episode just for the national championship that wouldn't be very long. You know what I mean? Just so that way we had a content there, different things for you all to look at. And as always, I appreciate everybody that taps in, takes the time to look at the videos, like, comment. It's truly appreciated. Continue to rock with me. I'll be bringing y'all content. I got some NFL content I'm gonna be bringing for y'all too from this past weekend. It was crazy. Some big games, some playoff spots clinched. A lot to talk about. So I'll be bringing you content on that as well. Just stay tuned.